In 1937, the city of Munich stood at the heart of a regime that sought to reshape not only Germany, but the very identity of its people. Known as the birthplace of the Nazi movement, Munich was both a stage and a symbol. Its streets, buildings, and public spaces were carefully curated to reflect power, unity, and control. Beneath this carefully constructed image, however, everyday life carried a far more complex and often unsettling reality. Archival footage from this period reveals a city in motion. Trams move steadily through busy streets, vendors arrange goods in open markets, and families walk together beneath banners and flags that hang from nearly every building. At first glance, there's a sense of normalcy, even calm. People go about their routines, children play, and cafés remain open. Yet, woven into these scenes is a constant presence of ideology. Swastika flags ripple in the wind, uniformed officials march in formation, and large gatherings celebrate events designed to reinforce loyalty to the regime. One such event was the Day of German Art, a grand display of culture tightly controlled by Nazi leadership. These celebrations were not simply artistic exhibitions, they were instruments of propaganda. Art was expected to reflect strength, purity, and obedience to state ideals. Modern and abstract styles were condemned, labeled as degenerate, and removed from public view. Museums were reorganized, galleries censored, and artists were either forced to conform or silenced altogether. Through these policies, creativity itself became regulated, molded into a tool of political messaging. Munich's urban landscape also began to change. Plans for monumental architecture aimed to transform the city into a visual representation of dominance. Wide boulevards, massive stone structures, and imposing government buildings were designed to inspire awe and submission. Some of these projects were completed, while others remained unfinished as the demands of war grew heavier. The city was being rebuilt not just physically, but ideologically, as every corner was shaped to reflect a singular vision of order and authority. For the average citizen, life during this time was marked by a careful balance between adaptation and quiet awareness. Many people complied outwardly, attending rallies, displaying flags, and participating in state-organized activities. Participation often felt less like a choice and more like a necessity. Surveillance and fear played a significant role. Speaking out against the regime could lead to arrest, imprisonment, or worse. As a result, conversations became cautious, trust became limited, and silence often became a form of self-preservation. As the late 1930s turned into the early years of war, the atmosphere in Munich began to shift. The early confidence projected by the regime gave way to tension and uncertainty. Resources became scarce. Food shortages, rationing, and long queues became part of daily life. Families adjusted to the absence of loved ones sent to the front lines. Letters from soldiers became treasured connections to distant battlefields, carrying both hope and fear. Then came the air raids. The sound of sirens shattered the routine of daily life. People rushed to shelters, carrying whatever they could. The sky above Munich, once filled with the hum of ordinary activity, became a battleground. Bombs fell, fires spread, and entire neighborhoods were reduced to rubble. Buildings that had stood for generations collapsed in moments. Churches, homes, and cultural landmarks were not spared. The destruction was not only physical, but deeply emotional, as memories tied to these places were lost along with them. Archival images from this period show streets covered in debris, walls torn open, and civilians moving through ruins with a mixture of shock and determination. Rescue efforts became a part of everyday life. Neighbors helped neighbors, digging through rubble in search of survivors. Despite the devastation, the population was resilient, a quiet determination to endure. Yet even in such an environment, resistance existed. Among the most notable was a group of students and intellectuals who would come to be known as the White Rose. Operating in Munich, they chose a path of non-violent resistance. Through pamphlets and written words, they challenged the ideology of the regime, calling for moral responsibility and an end to oppression. Their actions were carried out in secrecy, often at great personal risk. Distributing a single leaflet could mean facing severe punishment. As the war drew closer to its end, Munich bore the scars of years of conflict. The once carefully staged image of order had been replaced by visible destruction and exhaustion. Infrastructure was damaged, homes were gone, and the population faced an uncertain future. The grand architectural visions of the regime stood in stark contrast to the reality of a city struggling to survive. In the final days, the presence of authority weakened. What had once seemed unshakable began to collapse. For many residents, the end of the war brought a mixture of relief, grief, and reflection. The ideology that had shaped their daily lives for years had left behind consequences that could not easily be undone. Today, the footage from that era serves as a powerful reminder. It shows not only the mashtab of control and transformation imposed on a city, but also the human experiences within it, the routines, the fears, the losses, and the quiet acts of resistance all form part of the story. Munich during the Third Reich was more than a backdrop to history. It was a living, changing environment where ordinary people navigated extraordinary circumstances. Through these preserved images and accounts, the past continues to speak, offering lessons about power, resilience, and the importance of remembering.
Erster Blick in das Antlitz eurer Großmutter. Ich kenne sie nicht, aber könnte nicht auch sie, ihr Baby, ihre Heimat und ihren Mann verloren haben? Alles, was danach kam, lässt sich nicht trennen von damals. Eure Einsamkeit, eure Verzweiflung haben wir nicht gewollt. Aber uns brach das Herz, wenn ihr weinend nach Hause kamt. Habt ihr dieser Weg geglaubt? So gescheut. Ihr Bruder Hans und eine Handvoll Freunde. Sophie, Hans, Christoph, Alexander, Lilly, Professor Huber. Sie nannten sich die Weiße Rose. Sie verteilten Flugblätter in Hitler und werden alle nach einem Schauprozess von Generalstaatsanwalt Freisler verurteilt und durch das Fallbeil hingerichtet. Bewusst sind euch nur die Probleme eurer Gegenwart. Aber sie kommen von früher. Und deshalb könnt ihr auf der Verantwortung